Well, hello everyone. I hope you are having a great day today. Welcome to Wednesday's edition of Take 5. We are breaking down the message that I preached on Sunday. We simply called it the Tithing Test. And we've learned that's exactly what it is. In Malachi 3:10, God invites all of humanity, all of His people everywhere to prove Him at His word. He basically says, try me, prove me, put me to the test. Take a chance on me and you'll find out that I'm faithful to my promises. If you'll do what I say and bring the tithe to the storehouse, I will open the windows of heaven over you and bless you in an abundant way. What we actually find out is the test is not necessarily to God as much as it is to us. It's a test of our heart. Because that's what we've determined. We've got a heart problem, not necessarily a money problem, but we've got a heart problem. But this idea of bringing the tithe is one of those things you can't just do it one time and expect the blessings of God just to come falling down out of heaven and just God's going to make it rain on you. You can't do that. You've got to be steadfast and immovable in tithing because you believe it and because you want to be obedient to God. You have to be steadfast in tithing in the good times and in the bad, when it's up and when it's down and when all is messed up. You still got to be faithful in being obedient to God. It's not a problem for people to do it when everything is good. But what about when you have to put new tires on the car? That just comes out of nowhere, doesn't it, sometimes? That just happens. Bam, there it is. I had an incident like that just yesterday. I had a blowout on my trailer. The tires on my trailer are good, but I had a blowout. Tire come all to pieces, and I've got to do that. But here's the thing. I cannot put aside my duty and responsibility of tithing because I have a blowout. I've got to do it in spite of that. What about when the transmission goes out in your car? Or what about when you need a new washing machine? Boy, there's $700. Just boom, you gotta do it, You've got to be faithful all the time. In the good and the bad and the ugly, that's what He's looking for. And if you will be a faithful tither, God will take care of you. Now, many people try to overlook the concept and this principle of tithing and explain it away by saying, that's Old Testament, that's Old Covenant, and that's part of the law of Moses, and that doesn't apply to us today because we're under the New Covenant and grace and all that. I want to examine 3 reasons today, tomorrow, and Friday why this cannot be true. That sure enough, you'll find tithing in the law. We're going to read it in just a minute. But you also find it outside of the law. And so we can't be running around here half-cocked, making spiritual decisions off of misinformation. Because that's what we've been doing. Because we like misinformation because it's convenient, because it means I don't have to give money to God. And that's more for me, right? That's the overarching mindset. So let's jump into this. We're only going to look at one of them today. And here it is. The principle of the tithe started long before the law was ever given. So it did not just appear in the law. It started long before it was ever given. In fact, Abraham tithed to this man named Melchizedek, who was actually an Old Testament appearing of Jesus Christ. And I'll read you the scriptures that prove this. And he did this 430 years before tithing was a part of the Mosaic law. He tithed to Melchizedek. Now, when we look at this, you're going to find, as I read from Hebrews, about 8 verses there, you're going to find tithing is in the law. But you're also going to see that it is outside of the law. It's something that runs from Genesis to Revelation in the Bible. So let's look at this real quick. This Melchizedek was king of Salem. That's Jerusalem. Now remember, Melchizedek, he is an Old Testament appearing of Christ. He met Abraham returning from the defeat of 4 kings, and he blessed him. Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. Abraham had defeated 4 kings and plundered them, and when he was bringing the bounty back, he met this Old Testament appearance of Christ in the form of this spiritual priest named Melchizedek, and he tithed. He gave him 10% of his increase. Then it tells us who this Melchizedek is. The name Melchizedek means king of righteousness, king of Salem, and king of peace. He is without father or mother. He is without genealogy. He is without beginning of days or end of life. He resembles the Son of God, and he remains a priest forever. That is Jesus Christ, our ever-living high priest. Verse 5, now listen to this. Here's where the law comes in. He said, the law requires that the descendants of Levi who become priests, that they should collect a tenth from the people. Well, there it is. It's right there in black and white in Hebrews. It is in the law. The Levites, those priests, were required to collect a tenth, a tithe from the people. But listen to the next verse. This man, however, Melchizedek, who he's talking about, did not trace his descent from Levi, yet he collected a tenth from Abraham and blessed him who had the promises. So here is a priest outside of Levi, outside of the law, and this priest is also collecting and receiving tithe. And we know who this priest is. He's an Old Testament appearance of Christ. He was the ever-living high priest then. The Bible says he's our ever-living high priest now. And if Abraham, who is our spiritual father by faith, tithed to this high priest outside of the Levites and outside of the law, then we should do the same. In the one case, the tenth is collected by priests who die and are replaced by other priests. But in the other case, it's collected by him who is declared to be ever living. If temporary priests, my friend, receive tithes as they did under the Mosaic covenant, shouldn't Christ receive tithes who lives forever? Since Melchizedek was a type of Christ and Christ lives eternally, the principle of tithing has not and will not change, and God is as true as He said in Malachi 3:6, I am the Lord, I do not change. If men were required to bring tithes to an inferior system of priests, how much more should we give of our resources and our tithes to a superior system of priests? That priest is Jesus Christ. What a privilege it is to participate in that great thing. Another example real quick before we go. Jacob tithed on everything that God gave him, and this was 277 years before the law. Genesis 28:22 says, and this stone that I've set up for a pillar, Jacob says, shall be God's house, and of all that He gives me, I will give a full tenth back to Him. There it is outside the law. So, if you're one of those that says, well, it's in the law, it's old covenant, you're absolutely right. It is in the law. It was a requirement, but it was also outside of the law in that spiritual priest who was a foreshadowing of Jesus Christ, that spiritual priest named Melchizedek, who had no father, no mother, and no genealogy that could be recorded. We know it was Jesus Christ. And if Abraham, our spiritual father, brought tithes to Melchizedek, that Old Testament person of Christ, how much more should we bring our tithe to Jesus Christ in the day that we live in right now? Hey, I've got to get out of here. It's been good being with you today. I look forward to being with you tomorrow on Thursday's edition of Take 5. Till then, God bless you. Have a great day. Hey, trust the Lord, friend. He will never fail you.